Welcome back to U.S. Farm Report. Well, let's dig into some of these numbers. We have the pro farmer numbers that we talked about in the news segment, but as you go state by state, Brian, we'll talk to you because we knew that the eastern side was going to be good, but what were the biggest surprises and what was the biggest disappointment for you on the eastern leg of the tour?
Well, the biggest surprise, I think, was that the amount of tip back that we saw in Ohio and Indiana, and just the inconsistency. So that was, you know, I think I expected a little bit more. We knew that there was issues in the western side. I anticipated just a little bit better. And Ohio's a tough one because last year, you know, it had such a stellar crop. It didn't really have an Ohio crop. It had kind of an Indiana crop. Yeah. And I wanted to see an Indiana crop out of Ohio again, and I kind of did. I just didn't see it to the full degree.
You knew eastern Iowa was going to be good. I mean, I remember when you came on the show in early July, you were saying, listen, Iowa has the chance to make a record crop this year based on what you had seen. Did it live up to what you thought it would?
Well, eastern Iowa, I think, did. Northeastern Iowa in particular. There was some wow factor there, and that's the only state that I can say of the ones that I was in on the eastern leg that had some wow factor. And the wow factor, I think, is above Interstate 80, and more specifically, probably centered around Highway 20.
Yeah.
And Chip, you know, when you look at western Iowa, we knew there were going to be challenges, but the bar was pretty low heading into western Iowa. So did it surprise you at all?
Western Iowa in particular, yeah. It did, honestly, because after the way that western Iowa performed a year ago with some dry conditions and some heat, it wasn't as dry or as hot as it was this year, but we saw a really nice performance in western Iowa on the corn crop a year ago. And to see southwest Iowa fall off 10%, and some reduction in west central Iowa, and just a slight reduction in northwest Iowa from what wasn't really a great crop in 2021 up there. So again, I wasn't wowed by anything in western Iowa, but I was wowed by South Dakota and Nebraska. There's no question about that.
Yep, you were wowed, but not in a good way. I mean, you talked to a lot of farmers in those areas, but were you caught off guard with just how many challenges they had with that heat and the drought?
Oh yeah, the way that the crop has changed from August 1 to the end of August is pretty remarkable, I think. And several of the guys have said, listen, there was that 3-day period, I think it was August 5th, 6th, and 7th, 100 degrees, and the wind blew about 30 miles an hour with low humidity. And you could see the corn crop in eastern Nebraska kind of give up at that point. So, and then the crop has had to deal with some severe storms, hail, replants in June on corn in Nebraska. That was pretty tough to see.
Yeah, really tough to see because as scouts got, I mean, it wasn't just that. We saw some weed pressure. We saw some other things. I mean, it was just ugly when you look at the Western Corn Belt from the start. And that's what you said. The West is a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. Normally when I leave a dry area on a soybean crop in the third week of August, I think, geez, if they can get a rain tonight, that crop's still going to be okay. I left South Dakota and eastern Nebraska and thought if they get a rain, it's going to help, but it's not going to help that much.
Chip mentioned how much changed from kind of even the beginning of August. And, you know, as we got into Iowa and some of those other areas, talking to farmers, Brian, how much changed, some in a good way, some in a bad way, since July, since the beginning of July. So has the story changed just in the last 4 weeks, do you think, overall?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's changed more in the West than it has in the East, probably. I think the East is holding up really well. They have the moisture to continue into the finish line. So I don't think the change in the eastern side or the eastern leg here was super great. You know, as it was August 1, it probably still is right now, to be honest.
So the big question this week that everyone wanted to know, will the East make up for the problems that we saw in the West after you see these the crop tour numbers come in? What are your thoughts?
No, I don't think so. You go in and you kind of hope that will be the case, but they lost too many bushels out west. We'd have to have a phenomenal year in the Eastern Belt, and it's going to be a really good year. Let's be honest. Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Eastern Iowa is going to be a really good year. I don't think it's going to be good enough to offset what they lost in the Western Belt.
All right, well, we'll get Chip's thoughts on that. Plus, is that storyline, is that baked into the market at this point? We'll ask Chip that coming up later on U.S. Farm Report.
U.S. Farm Report is brought to you by RCIS. We believe in making connections count by building relationships with farmers and crop insurance agents. RCIS, we've got this. Equal opportunity provider.